بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Last week we began the station of Zuhd, Asceticism, and today inshallah we will continue and we will begin with the first of the three stages. Abu Ismail al-Harawi rahimahullah ta'ala says وهو على ثلاث درجات الدرجة الأولى الزهد في الشبهة بعد ترك الحرام بالحذر من المعتبة والأنفة من المنقصة وكراهة مشاركة الفساق. So here, as his style is always, he begins with the first of the three levels. This is the level that all Muslims should be able to participate in and should be pursuing. And the first of the three elements of this level is it has to do with misconceptions in or what's called shubha, in leaving that which is uncertain. That's poor wording. So there are certain things that we are not sure, is this allowed or it's not allowed. So part of zuhud is when we leave that which we don't have clear information on. Okay, so we apply zuhud when we are not sure about the permissibility of something. And this goes back to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he says, إِنَّ الْحَلَالَ بَيِّن وَإِنَّ الْحَرَامَ بَيِّن وَبَيْنَهُمَا أُمُورٌ مُشْتَبِهَاتٌ لَا يَعْلَمُهُنَّ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ فَمَنِ اتَّقَى الشُّبُهَاتِ فَقَدْ اسْتَبْرَأَ لِدِينِهِ وَعِرْضِهِ. The Prophet ﷺ says, halal is clear and haram is clear, but between them is a gray area that many people don't know how to navigate. Those who know how to navigate it are the people of knowledge. So whoever, he gives us the ruling here, or how to deal with it. Whoever leaves, protects themselves from falling into the gray area, then they will preserve their faith and their reputation. So this is what Abu Ismail is getting at. We come across situations where we're not sure, is this permissible or is this forbidden? So how do we deal with that? We deal with it by leaving it until we are certain that it's halal or not. Right? So, for example, you're reading the ingredients of a certain product and you come across something and you're not sure what it is. You try Googling it, you're not sure. You try looking at the halal scan applications to see, and they're not giving you anything. But you feel like this might be some sort of alcohol or some sort of forbidden thing for us to consume. Then it's better to leave it and find something that you are certain about. And what essentially this does is, as the Prophet ﷺ says, the analogy he continues to give in the same hadith is the following. He says, it's like a shepherd herding their herd or their flock of sheep, and he's herding on a fence or by a fence. So back in the day, the fences weren't like today where they're really tall or they're very well made, where it's pretty much impossible for a sheep to jump over or pass through, but they had their fences back then. Someone who's herding their sheep and grazing them around this fence, sooner or later one of those sheep is going to make its way under the fence or around it or over it, whatever. Right? So this analogy the Prophet ﷺ is using to teach us what happens when we roam around the haram. So the fence is meant to represent that which is forbidden, the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the right of the fence, you're okay. You're in the green. On the left of it, you're in the red. But when someone's grazing around it, sooner or later they're going to fall into it. Right? One of their feet is going to step on the other side, or they're gonna trip, fall, whatever it is, and they're going to fall into it. So in such scenarios, we leave the what we're not certain of. And then Abu Ismail continues on this point by telling us why we leave it. Right? We leave these things for three reasons. The goal is to reach three things. The first one is بالحذر من المعتبة, is out of concern and protecting ourselves, being proactive in not falling into something that is blameworthy. So as the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, whoever leaves these this gray area and stays on the safe side, then they preserve their faith and they preserve their honor and their dignity, their reputation. Because you can imagine you're at Walmart or Target and you're buying something, and then mashallah, when the community member just happens to be there and is looking, oh my God, she's holding a bottle of alcohol. Uh-oh. And then she goes and starts spreading the rumors. Right? Even though you didn't drink it or you didn't really buy or anything, you were just observing. You didn't know it was a bottle of alcohol in the first place. Or for example, pork meat. You thought it was beef. Right? You're at, well, I guess when we go to the halal stores, it's not really an option. But you get the idea, right? You're doing something, you're doing it very, very innocently, and then all of a sudden someone just happens to pass by and they start spreading the rumors. Maybe you know of incidents like that with other people. Some sister is walking and some guy just asks her a question, a very quick question. Hey, do you know where this store is or that store is? Or do you know what this is? And she answers the question, and then someone's passing by and thinks that, oh my God, she has a boyfriend or she's talking to another guy, right? So it can be pretty damaging to the person. Now, in such a scenario, the person is not blameworthy, and the blame is on the one who spread the rumor. But we as Muslims, we are cautious in our own self-image, how people perceive us, so that we don't fall into such problems. So Abu Ismail Harawi is saying that when we leave the gray area, the intention should be, to preserve ourselves from falling into something that can lead to blameworthiness, that can lead to other people blaming us, and more importantly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala putting blame on us. As for the second element of this, al-anifa min al-munaqqasa, is the person, when they leave the gray area, they leave it because they know that it can bring them down iman-wise, or it can take away from their good deeds. So when you compare it, okay, if I leave this, I'm not missing anything, I'm not losing out on good deeds, right? But if I take it and I end up being wrong, then it can take away from my good deeds, it can take away from my iman, and worst of all, it can further distance me from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the person, when they leave it, this is on their mind. They're concerned about this. And then the third reason why we leave the shubha, the gray area, is because we hope and we despise, we don't like being in the group of the fusaq, the unpious people, right? We try and stay away from the ways of the unpious people. Why? Because these people, so just to take a step back, aside from the gray area, right? This is kind of its own separate thing. We as general Muslims, as average spiritualists, we should always distance ourselves from people who are outwardly and very publicly disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the fusaq, people who might be drinking publicly and they don't care, or they're doing certain things that they're not supposed to be doing. They are publicly disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We despise and we dislike being around such people. Why? Well, first of all, because they are sinners, and this is not a place we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to see us in. So in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says the most beloved places of earth or on earth to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the masajid. Why? Because they are the places where Allah is being worshipped and being remembered. And the most disliked places on earth to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the markets, right? Because that is a place where Allah is forgotten. Everyone's busy with their business, their trade, their transactions. People are shouting, buy this, buy that, I'm selling this for this price. This is more of the Eastern style markets. And it just, when someone enters it, their mind is completely focused on dunya, on this world, and it becomes very difficult to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ's advice to one of the companions is, don't be the first one to enter the market, and don't be the last one to leave the market. And the supplication we say, or the dhikr we say when we enter the market is, La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, lahul mulku wa lahul hamd, yuhyi wa yumit, وهو على كل شيء بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. Right? That's what we say when we enter the market, to try and remind ourselves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So being around people or in a place where Allah is publicly being disobeyed, that is not a place that we want to be in, because that's a place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes. That's one reason. The second reason is fusaq, people who are publicly disobeying Allah. They are almost always, if not always, people who are seeking the world. They are pursuing the world in a very concerning way. So we, as inshallah, as decent Muslims who try their best to dedicate their lives to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to Islam, to adhere to the principles of the religion. Yes, we have shortcomings. Sometimes we like to enjoy ourselves. We spend the day at a park, an amusement park. We go and do certain recreational activities. That's not what I'm talking about here. But someone who is indulging in disobedience, all of these acts, such as drinking alcohol, eating pork, being with the opposite gender in an inappropriate way, just being at a club or anything like that, all of these are purely worldly gains. I mean, there's nothing beyond that other than the instant self-gratification. When we go to a park or something, we're spending time with the family, and that's something healthy and praiseworthy in Islam, and developing those relationships, etc. So I hope I was able to differentiate between the worldly engagements of the common worldly engagements versus the worldly engagements of the fusaq, the disobedient. So these people are people who are very aggressively pursuing instant gratification and pursuing worldly pleasures. Right? That is their center. That is their goal. They don't see beyond it. They don't care about what's beyond that, meaning the afterlife. So these aren't people we want to be around, because we don't want to be associated with them in this life nor the next life. And the Prophet ﷺ was asked once, a companion was very concerned and crying, and the Prophet ﷺ asked him, why are you crying? What's wrong? And he said that, I think about how happy I am being around you, and then I think how in the next life you'll be in the Firdaus al-A'la, the highest level of paradise, and we won't get to see you anymore. And that made him sad. So the Prophet ﷺ said, you are with the people you love in this life, in the next life. In the next life, you are with the people who you loved in this life. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verse, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affirmed what the Prophet ﷺ said by saying that whoever obeys Allah and the Messenger, then they will be with the group of the prophets and the highly righteous people, and the martyrs and the pious. So you are with the people you love in this life. So we want to make sure that that love is placed in a place where it's going to benefit us in the next life. The last thing we want is to be resurrected with disobedient people. So inshallah we affirm and we reaffirm and we revive and rejuvenate our love for the Prophet ﷺ and the companions and the prophets in general, so that inshallah we are resurrected with them. Okay, the second level, الدرجة الثانية الزهد في الفضول وهو ما زاد على المسكة والبلاغ من القوت باغتنام التفرغ إلى عمارة الوقت وحسم الجأش والتحلي بحيلة الأنبياء والصديقين. The second level is also very much doable. So I hope it doesn't seem like, oh, this is out of our hands. We can always do our best to take elements of these elements, to take portions of these elements and step by step build them until they become part of our character and our daily routine. So he says the second level of asceticism is leaving that which is more than what you need. Okay, you have what you need, and then anything beyond that or more than that, we leave it. Whether that is taking something and storing it for later on, or eating more than what you need to eat. So storing more than what you need to store, or consuming more than what you need to consume. So this is part of asceticism. Why is that? Now today in our times, especially COVID, this is, put the COVID situation aside for now, we need to store. But in other circumstances, the more we store, the more we consume, what ends up happening is the following. It can lead to us losing time. Now, when we go to the market and we need to buy one or two things, we go in, we get those two things, and 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, we're out of the store. But if we're going and we're just kind of shopping every single aisle, going back and forth between these aisles, oh, what do I need? Let me think. Is this good? Should I look at that? You'll end up spending an hour and a half, and you lost that time to do something else that will bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the reason why we leave more than what we need, whether it's storage-wise or consumption-wise, is not because it's necessarily haram. Right? It's not that it's haram to have more in your bank account or in your pantry than what you need, or it's not haram to eat, a piece of cake that you didn't need to eat, or to eat that snack that you didn't need to eat. That's not what Ismail is saying here, but rather when we spend, it's about the time factor. When we do more than what we need to do, we end up losing the time to do something else. So yeah, you can go and have a snack. That's fine. It's not haram. But how much time is that going to take from you? Oh, I'm going to have a snack and I'm going to watch some clips on YouTube. Well, there goes 30 minutes, right? So that's the idea here. A true ascetic, a true zahid, is someone who is trying to take advantage of their time, every second of their time. And in previous sessions, we've gone over, the value of time and how time is something that we cannot regain. If time passes us, then we've lost it forever. It's not like money, where money comes and goes. Yesterday, I didn't have too much money. Today, I have much money, and tomorrow it's a little bit less, and the day after that, it's a little bit more. It goes up and down. Same thing with, our relationships with family members, etc. Sometimes it's, very strong, sometimes a little bit weaker, and it goes up and down. But time, you have it there. If you miss it, if you don't utilize it, it's gone, right? So that's the first element. We leave. The second level of zuhud is to leave that which we don't need, to leave that which is beyond our needs. Why? Number one, to take advantage of our time. And number two, hasm al-jash. And before that, I'm sorry, there's another important point about imarat al-waqt, about investing our time. When, time is also, how we use our time is also indicative of what is really inside our hearts and our minds. We like to do that which we enjoy. When we love something, we love to spend our time with that thing. So if we love a particular person, then we love to spend our time with that person. If we love a certain show, right, a sitcom, then we love to spend our time. We're willing to give up our time in order to view that show. So it's really explains to us what's in our heart. If our love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very strong, then we will love to spend our time with Him. If we have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, then if our love for Allah is very strong, if our bond with Allah is strong, then what you'll find is that we will be spending every single time, every single moment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have a second now, okay. I want to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like one of the righteous, the early righteous Muslims said, love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like, loving Allah is like being a fish. If you're outside water, you start flabbling around, right? You start jumping up and down, desperately seeking air. Likewise, when someone who is in love, who has love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that love has really taken over their heart, not being in a state where they're not remembering Allah or doing something that brings them closer to Allah, they feel like that fish. Right? They feel like they can't breathe. They need the oxygen until they are put back in the water, and they can go about doing, living very calmly. So until the person goes back to remembering Allah, they just feel an amount of distress and discomfort. Um, so that's what Ibn Ismail rahimahullah ta'ala is saying. We The more we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we'll put aside the excess food and drink and sleeping and rest and relaxation in order to continue to pursue Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is built off the love. The more we love Allah, the more we will utilize our time for His sake subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second element of why we should leave the excess things of life is hasmul jash, and that is the following. I don't know how to translate this, but basically, well, I guess I'll try. Basically, it's saying that you're cutting off that instinctive or the animalistic nature of the heart. So jash is someone, or is like it's a attribute of a person who is always trying to get more than what they need and to take what they don't deserve, or to take things from other people. So it has a very actually derogatory meaning there. So we need to prevent that. Why? Because when we cut that characteristic out, we are cutting our heart from being attached to the means of the world. Okay? So we've talked about this, I believe, before, and just to kind of refresh our minds and put it in the context of zuhud. When we are overly indulging in the world, and you see this very much today, and I think it's one of the reasons why atheism is on the rise and lack of religiosity, or religiosity is on the fall. When a person is always looking at life from the worldly lens, this is the world, this is what it has to offer me, this is how you gain money, this is how you live, this is how you eat, etc. And the theology and the spirituality is cut off of that. What ends up happening is a person becomes attached to the means of reaching these things. Whereas when you add the spiritual and Islamic elements to what we do, it gives a different perspective, and that is not to only look at the means to achieving or obtaining these things, but also to understand the one who created those means in the first place. And that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we become overly indulged in the worldly things, the person or the heart ends up cutting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of the picture. So when you look at people today, right, and you look at Quranic verses that say anything that occurs in this life is by the permission of Allah, right? It's throughout the Quran, and we as Muslims believe that. We have to believe in order to be a Muslim. But when you look at the way things are functioning today, okay, everything that occurs has to be by the permission of Allah. Okay, I'm going to go and disobey Allah, right? I'm going to do something that is displeasing to Allah. He didn't stop me. He didn't do anything. He didn't cut that out. Does that mean that He gave me the permission to do that? So it creates a type of confusion because of the lack of deep understanding of theology and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's authority, or having a very naive understanding of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. So the goal here in zuhud, by leaving the excess, the excessiveness, or leaving that which we don't need, what we try and do here is we cut off the heart from being attached to the means and becoming attached to the one who creates the means, subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So our heart is no longer attached to this world is no longer attached to this world through the emotions of fear and hope and love and anger and ambition, etc. These emotions, if that makes sense, are not attached. We all have these emotions, right? We all have these characteristics. We don't attach them to this world, right? And the way we do that, or the way we prevent these emotions from becoming attached to the world itself, is through zuhud, is through asceticism. By doing asceticism, we are taking these emotions and now placing them with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. right? And just to reiterate what we said last week, the idea here is not to leave the world. It's not to cut ourselves off from the world entirely, but rather make sure that we take our emotions and properly place them, right? So that's the point here. It's not about not eating that snack, but it's about making sure the heart is in the right place when you eat that snack, and to be aware of the challenges, the spiritual challenges that something as simple as having a snack can bring to the person. Now, of course, it's not going to be a life-changing thing, right? It's not going to take one's spirituality from high to low or from low to high, but the concept is that when we do these things and it becomes a habit, so every day we eat a snack and we watch our show, right? It tends to shift our motivations. It tends to shift our emotions where we're placing them. So do be aware of that. And then the third element of the second level of zuhud is at-tahalli bihilati al-anbiya, is to wear the cloaks of the prophets and the Siddiqeen and the righteous people. What is meant by that is our characteristics and our manners, right? So the cloak is a metaphor for what the outer image of us. So like we try and wear nice clothing that's clean and smells nice and ironed, so that people can see us with a good image. Our characteristics, our behavior is also like a cloak. People see us based on that cloak. If our cloak of character is good and it's sound, then people will see us as a good person, and the opposite holds true as well. So a zahid at the second level is someone who is pursuing the characteristics and the behaviors of the prophets and the righteous people. And that's why it's very important to read the stories of the prophets and read the stories of the righteous people. Right? It's not a fantasy story of some supernatural being who, mashallah, whose iman was so high and he had miracles that he or she performed. That's not it. The idea is to understand their character, right? To try and take the lessons from their life as to how they reached that high position in the first place, how they reached their levels of iman in the first place, and then trying to emulate those behaviors and those characteristics. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. In the Prophet is a good role model for those who seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Day of Judgment. Right? Those who want to be close to Allah and have a high level in the afterlife, then they should follow the role model of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. And then finally, the third level of zuhud is الزهد في الزهد وهو بثلاثة أشياء: استحقار ما زهدت فيه واستواء الحالات فيه عندك والذهاب عن شهود الاكتساب ناظرا إلى وادي الحقائق. The third level of zuhud is one of those confusing Sufi mix-ups and entanglements. The third level of zuhud is to do zuhud over your zuhud, to do asceticism over your asceticism, right? What does he mean by that? Okay, it's a little bit clearer when he clarifies and he tells us the elements of this. But basically, we are doing zuhud, right? We are trying to be a zahid in this life. Why? Because it brings us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Now, as we've gone over in previous sessions about certain things that creep up in the mind and the heart that nullify our efforts and our deeds, likewise, when it comes to being a zahid, sometimes what happens is a person becomes deceived by their own zuhud, and they start thinking of themselves highly. And that zuhud actually becomes a tool of the shaitan to drag them to the world. So you have, Ibn Qayyim points this out about some Sufi practices. Those who just wander in the forests and the wilderness. They're just wandering around, and you ask them, why are you doing this? And their answer is, we are doing zuhud of this life, right? And Ibn Qayyim says, no, you are doing shahwa of this life. You're following the desires of this life. How so? We don't have the luxurious homes and shoes and commodities and whatnot. He said, it's not just about that. Why are you leaving your responsibilities? Because you are lazy. Your shahwa isn't wealth. Your shahwa is rest and relaxation. And that is a desire. We all desire relaxation. You know, the image of being on the beach with the nice chair and you're soaking the sun in the water and there's no one around you. And right, we can all use something like that, especially now when we've been confined to our homes. That's a desire. So what happens sometimes is these zuhad, these asceticists, because their lack of knowledge, this creeps up in their heart and they don't even realize it. Their zuhud is not an actual zuhud of this life. It's not something that's bringing them closer to Allah. It's actually something that is bringing them closer to the dunya, to the world. So be aware of that. So that's the idea here of the third one. And to put it in, to reframe it in a different way, the first level of zuhud is establishing asceticism, the foundations of asceticism. The second level of zuhud is the attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then once you reach this level, it's not about enhancing the amount of zuhud you're doing. You have reached the goal, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By doing the second level of zuhud, you are attaching yourself completely and entirely to Allah. So afterwards, it's not about further attaching yourself to Allah. There's nothing more to attach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or for you to do. You're doing it at this level. The third level is about preserving the second level, right? So the third level is about preserving the second level, and that's always the most difficult. It's easy to memorize the Quran. The Quran is an easy book to memorize. That's not the difficult part. What's difficult is keeping it memorized. Because the person who has the Quran memorized needs to review daily, right? Or they need to average at least a juz'u a day until the Quran truly becomes ingrained in their heart and imprinted in their hearts, right? So memorizing the Quran is easy, and perhaps reaching the second level is not the most difficult thing, but preserving the second level, that's the goal of the third level. So to do that, we do zuhud of our zuhud, meaning we attach ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here. And the third level, we are disattaching ourselves from our actions so that we don't become deceived and start doing tazkiyah, purification of the self, and making claims about ourselves that aren't true. So he says in order to do that, we do the following. استحقار ما زهدت فيه. You look down at what you did zuhud of. So, in the previous level, we were talking about not indulging in excess desires or excess needs or things that are excessive in order to preserve your time, in order to spend your time. Now, let's say a person is doing that. They are sparing their time so that they can use it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and coming closer to Allah. The third level is saying the following. You did that, good. Now look down at what you did. Do not be deceived. Do not deceive yourself into thinking that your zuhud is something, mashallah, that you should be proud of. You need to look down at your deeds. Why? Because there's nothing that is worthy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whoever's heart has been filled with the love of Allah, then no matter what they do, they never feel it's good enough for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They never feel that they are able to fully express their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know how sometimes you have an idea, it's a very good idea, but you're having trouble explaining that idea to other people, and it just doesn't make sense, and it makes you frustrated, right? Or you're trying to express your concern. I'm sure you had a lot of stories with your children, right? You're trying to express to them, your concern for them, and then it just kind of falls into ears that don't understand what you're saying. You are trying to express your love and your care for them, but the amount of love that you have is far more profound and deeper than the amount of your eloquency, right? Does that make sense? Okay, I'm glad. All right, so sometimes we have emotions, but we don't have the eloquency to be able to fully express those emotions. That's kind of an example here. We look down at what we are doing. Why? Because it doesn't fully capture the love that we have for Allah. No matter how much khushu' I had in prayer, right, it's not worthy of Allah. My love for Him is more than what I can provide Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or what I can express to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no matter what I give to Allah, no matter how much I do for Him, I know that He is worthy of way more than that. I remember all of the hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes clear to us that no matter what we do, in the end, it's for our own best interest. There's nothing that we can do to truly, that's befitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's majesty, subhanahu. Likewise, whatever we leave in this world, right, we need to remember, put things into perspective. How much is this world worth to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? As the hadith tells us, this world and all that's in it does not weigh more than the wing of a mosquito to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like the wing of a mosquito is absolutely worthless. This life is absolute, and everything in it is worthless to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no value to it. And when we look at the world from this lens, if we leave certain things of this life, say, okay, I'm not going to go to the theaters today, right? Okay, what do we really leave? It's worthless in the first place. You don't go to your husband doesn't come to you and say, oh, look how much I love you. I threw away this piece of paper for you, right? I'm expressing my love to you. I'm just going to rip out this piece of paper and throw in the garbage to let you know that, I can do without it, right? I'm sure I could just imagine your reactions to that. Maybe a slap, maybe kind of the look, right, as they call it. Maybe are you serious? Or maybe, oh my God, my husband is so weird. I have to make him feel better about himself. Something like that. So when we give up things in this life for the sake of Allah, we need to remember, it's as if we're presenting a wing of a mosquito to Allah, saying, oh Allah, I'm leaving this for you. I'm leaving this for you. It's not worth much, right? So we do zuhud of our zuhud by looking down at what we did zuhud in, right? By looking down at what we left. We didn't leave much. And what are we leaving? Right? This is a third way to look at it. We are leaving, it's like saying, I am sacrificing my 1980 Toyota Corolla so that I can drive a 2020 Mercedes-Benz, right? And I'm doing zuhud of this world. And I'm proud of myself. Look at what I did. I'm going around bragging, right? Look at how much sacrifice I can do for other people, right? So it's like that with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we leave certain things in this life, we are leaving it for something else, and that is to be with Allah. So we are leaving the trash can in order to sit in a garden, and that is the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we're actually benefiting ourselves. We are the ones who are gaining. So there's nothing to be proud of when we leave these things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this isn't to say that we don't feel a sense of joy or happiness, right? It is okay to feel happy when you do something good. And this is in a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ was asked by someone. He said, Ya Rasulullah, Allahumma salli wa sallam alayhi. What is the situation of someone who does something for the sake of Allah and then people start praising him or her for doing that? And the Prophet ﷺ responded and said, Tilka ajilu bushra al-mu'min. That is the hastened glad tidings of the believer, or glad tidings that is hastened to the believer. So it's nothing wrong with feeling a sense of joy and happiness and being proud of what you did. But in the reality, put things into perspective. Don't be deceived, right? Don't be deceived that you have reached high levels or that you did something truly worthy of praise. Rather, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends to you in terms of reward and praise, that is from His bounty, subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is from His mercy. That is from His rahmah. And that is not something that we deserve, truly. I hope those examples kind of clarified from three different angles. Right. The second element of the third level of zuhud is istiwa'ul halati fihi indak. And that is for the situations to have the same level of importance to you. And what that means is the following. Leaving something is not always easy. Leaving something for the sake of Allah is not always easy. And leaving certain worldly pleasures is not always easy. And therefore, when we leave them, we tend to feel like, oh my God, I did something really big, and or I wish I had it. You still have that kind of that withdrawal feeling where, man, I wish I can do this. And then so the person feels like they feel like it bothers them. So at this level, we preserve our zuhud by balancing or developing an indifference for what we leave. So whether I uh, obtain something of the worldly pleasures or not, right? Both are the same to me. Okay? And for youth, maybe you remember when you were younger, this is very difficult. You know how, okay, today we are going to, I don't know what you all used to do for recreation here with your kids, but when I was younger, it was Chuck E. Cheese. Today we're going to go to Chuck E. Cheese, okay? Just get yourself ready and whatnot. And yeah, we're all excited and happy. And then something happens and say, you know what, guys, I'm sorry, we can't go today. Something came up. The feeling that we got as kids, oh my God, wow, this is the end of the world. What am I going to do now, right? Because we lost something and we can't it's so powerful or so difficult for the heart to accept. What a zahid at this level does is they need to start building that indifference to the worldly affairs. And I'm not talking about that which is important to us. I'm not talking about that which brings benefit to society or to the family or to other people. What I'm talking about is worldly pleasures. Whether or not you go to this restaurant today, whether or not you had this particular meal today that you've been wanting, right, makes no difference to you. If you have it, alhamdulillah. This is a blessing from Allah. If you don't have it, alhamdulillah. The world didn't end. Alhamdulillah, this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So developing that indifference to what we have in this life and what we don't have in this life. And again, this ties into what we mentioned last week, and that is that zuhud is not about leaving the world. It's not about not enjoying what the pleasures of this life, but rather it's about the heart being indifferent to it. You enjoyed it, then you convert your enjoyment and your pleasure into something that brings you closer to Allah. You don't enjoy it, you didn't have it, you didn't consume it, then it's something that you take and you convert into something that brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is about the heart not being attached to these things, right? It's not about the body being disconnected from worldly life. And then finally, the last, and that requires an amount of fiqh, right? Of understanding the true nature of zuhud and how it works. And I hope that we've gone over that and it's become clearer. The third and final element of this level is الذهاب عن شهود الاكتساب ناظرا إلى وادي الحقائق. And what this means is the following. The person no longer observes their own doing, their own efforts in obtaining what they have. Rather, they look at the one who is providing us in the first place, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what happens here is the person and their worldly possessions and their worldly affairs, they don't look at it from the lens of the self. They're not observing these things from their two eyes. Rather, they're looking up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and understanding how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is part of this process in the first place, right? How Allah is the link between me and this thing. So if I have a bank account and there's X amount of dollars in that bank account, I'm not looking at what I did in order to earn or to save that much money. Rather, I'm looking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how He gave me the ability to do that in the first place. How He has favored me or has blessed me with this amount of wealth in the first place. How He made a world that He gave me the understanding of. He gave me the ability to build a profession to earn that money, right? So that is the third level of the third element of the third level of zuhud. Um, right? And also to add to that, in terms of the spiritual side, is that if this world, based on the previous levels and the previous elements, the more we get into zuhud, the idea is the less valuable this world becomes to us. So imagine the world, you're kind of shrinking it in your heart. The amount of place, or the place that this world holds in your heart becomes smaller, smaller, and smaller, right? And the smaller it becomes, the more we feel like what we leave, what we sacrifice in this life for the sake of Allah is also small. So take Ramadan for example. We're fasting, we are leaving our pleasures, we're leaving our food and drink and our enjoyment, relaxation, that essential cup of coffee in the morning, right? And we feel like, man, I'm doing this for the sake of Allah, alhamdulillah, I'm sacrificing, and there's a lot of good in that. But the smaller this world becomes to us, the less that these sacrifices, the less we feel that these sacrifices have meaning, or the less meaning these sacrifices have. It's more about, I am just submitting to you, O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is about the love I have for you. And the smaller it becomes in our eyes, the less we see we are doing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, likewise, what this also means is that the smaller this world becomes to us, the more we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we observe Him in what's going on, the more we ascribe Him to our possessions, and He is the one who provided us with it. What ends up happening is we submit more and more to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to where we become like someone who is floating on a stream. We let the water take us, and that water represents kind of the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what He decrees for us or what He tells us to do. Sometimes there are things that are out of our hands, and other times there are things that we are responsible for adhering to. Both of them are in this river, and both of them are causing the flow of the river. So we just sit there floating. Oh Allah, you told me to do this, I'm going to do it, and let it take me to where you want me to be. And your qadar, I'm going to accept it and embrace it and let it take me to where you want me to be. So Allah Ta'ala Alam, with that we conclude the station of al-Zuhd, and the next station is the sister of al-Zuhd, and that is al-Wara, which can also be translated as asceticism, but it's asceticism at a different angle than Zuhd. Inshallah, we will talk about that next week. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين.